So the players they lost over the summer include the likes of Luke Jenkins, our own signing Ben Brooks, Josh Castiglione having signed a new contract before he then moved to St Albans. Nigel, with the late change of ownership going full-time and the heartbreak suffered in the playoffs, we know how you feel, babes. There are some names that were inevitably going to leave at the end of last season.
Yeah, they have. They've had a big turnover, haven't they? And I think, like you say, they're going the full time, and it's that hangover of that, and not. I mean, they didn't even win a game, did they? They lost that game to Braintree. Yeah. So it would have been a heartache. Going that whole season and finishing second in the league, it's disappointing, isn't it? And they haven't got a good playoff record as a club, anyway, have they? They're a little bit of a choker. They've been up there for many years, and I think they're the longest in the league.
By a mile.
Yeah,
yes, they are.
And they always tend to have a really good season and a really poor season. And like you say, it's that hangover's there. They've had a big turnover of players, and this going full time. But it's kind of like, we thought our hybrid medal was bad. I mean, you're going to come on to it in a minute, but it's half-hearted, isn't it? You've got some players that are playing and not playing and not training and optional training. Do you know what I mean? You can see why it must be frustrating for Robbie Simpson. And they haven't had a good start. They're down there, aren't they? So
to the goalkeepers, James Askew is a youth keeper retained, and Ted Collins signed on from Colchester. So a couple of young goalkeepers. Collins has had the first 5 games. Almost deja vu with the Hampton and Richmond preview there, Nigel, but I'll say it again. Youth combining with Alan Julian in that case. Less so with the current setup for the Clarets, though, potentially.
Yeah, possibly. We don't know the experience of their goalkeeping coaches, if they've got coaches at all, whatever, but it's just difficult at this time of the season, isn't it, to sort of like, everybody starts off at a level playing field, but that does sort of plateau out a little bit. There are a few sort of unexpected results, maybe from within, but a lot of the sort of pundits, or the so-called pundits, did sort of say they might struggle, and it's just been proven, hasn't it? You've got to always be wary that you don't get into that sort of like. It's like Eastbourne last year, isn't it? That's a very similar sort of situation. It was up there the season before. I can't remember if they made the playoffs or they were knocking on the door of the playoffs. Certainly went to the full-time model. Everyone expected them to sort of like to kick on, and they didn't. And you always think it's going to come. But then as the season goes on and the pitches get heavier, and you're playing under, it's cold, it's dark, it's damp. All them sort of bookings kick in, injuries kick in, and you're in that bottom 4, and you get a few wins, you can't get out of it, and it always gets further and further away. I mean, they did change their manager, Eastbourne. We're going off on a tangent, but and they did get out of it. But you can sort of see the same sort of pattern happening with Chelmsford, can't you? Yeah. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work going from a part-time to this sort of hybrid level. You've either got to be all in or not at all, because you just get that disjointed in the squad, and that's sort of like playing out at Chelmsford at the moment, isn't it?
So from a defensive point of view for Chelmsford, Cameron James was retained from last season, but he's out long-term injured, as we'll discuss momentarily. Matthew Yates is a youth defender added to their ranks. Jeffrey Onokwo signed from Bowers and Pitsea, but he's also out long-term injured at present. Ruarid Donaldson signed from Hampton and Richmond. Sam Ogunteyu is an ex-Charlton youth with experience at the aforementioned Eastbourne. Arthur Penny joined from Lewis, where he was the managers and players player of the season last season. Bradley Williams has joined from Carshalton Athletic. Jack Turner, an Essex native, joins from Burnley. Quite the commute there. E.K. Orgy signed from Gillingham on loan at Hemel and Welling last season. Sam Gale also on loan from Gillingham. So it's quite a long list of defenders been signed up there, Nigel. So I wondered, is it an overreaction to losing Cameron James, or is it just decent squad depth?
Yeah, I think they've gone down that route, haven't they, of the experience, like we said before. I mean, Cameron James, ex-Stone, of course. Cameron James was here on loan from Colchester, I believe, under the early days of Hakan and John Still. But he's been sort of like their one mainstay. But that's going to impact you if you're injured. And they've got a lot of young players in. I mean, Oji, I rate him. I think he's quite good. Bombs up and down that right hand side. He was obviously had a loan spell at Chatham. And you said, as you said, they're well in. Sam Gale played for Sheppey a few seasons ago. So although they've come from these sort of Premier League clubs, they're not a lot of mainstays of these Premier League clubs. They're sort of players that have gone out on loan and sort of got their men's football at a sort of step 4, step 5 level. So they've not played at this level before. So again, you're trying to integrate that into your sort of like, you're going full-time or you're going that hybrid full-time model, and you've got the inexperienced players. I mean, they would have come from the youth setup, so they'd be used to sort of similar to that, but they're all in it together, aren't they? So again, that's like we've said with Hampton and Richmond and the like, that'll either be a good thing and you'll like be in the trenches together and the experience of youth sort of thing, and you're sort of all stick together, or it can have very quickly a few bad results and you haven't got that experience to be able to sort of like call on to pick yourself up. I mean, they've got a very experienced manager in Robbie Simpson. You know, he knows this level now. He's had a good football league career, but he's going to have to call on all of that experience, I think, to sort of just get them up to being competitive and then kicking on from there.
So in the midfield for the Clarets, Jacob Bland, Dimitri Nicolau, Alfie Gilby are youth midfielders. Louis Dunn is retained, as is Charlie Ruff and Callum Watts from last season. Calvin Lumbombo Kalala signed from Lewis. Archie Tamplin signed from Lewis as well. He's a name synonymous with the Essex area, of course. Ryan Blackman signed from St Albans City. Kane Critchlow signed on from Bishop Stortford, and you may remember he scored 5 against Aldershot in one memorable game in the FA Trophy last season. So some key midfield men from last season retained, and some rather good names supplementing that list too, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, the big one that stands out there is Charlie Ruff, isn't he? I think, wasn't he named the National League South, or he was definitely in the National League Team of the Year. Plays in that attacking number 10 role, plays either behind the front 2 or just off of the front 1. Very experienced, you know, gets a lot of crucial goals for them, but again, if the team's not performing, you would wonder how long he would sort of stay around. We don't know what his job is. You know, if he's coming from a part-time setup, that might have been the sort of the catalyst to keep him at the club, because they have a loss, as we previously said. A lot of their sort of bigger players last year, their big performers, have moved on to the National League, or you know, in Ben Brooks' case, he's come here seeking that full-time football. So yeah, you do wonder how long he would stay around, but again, it's sort of like supplementing that with youth. You know, it's just getting that balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You know, if like last season, Charlie Ruff would have been one of a few players that would be potential threats, but if you're the only one, it's going to be easy to contain him, isn't it?
But also a bit of a burden on him as well, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's again what we're saying about the younger players. They're inexperienced. They've got to step up to the plate and be that one that's going to go and get that goal, or you know, dig in and keep a team out. And it can't always be on Charlie, because he's going to, you know,
it'll be rough on Charlie.
Boom, boom.
Thank you. So to the forwards, Chelmsford, Freddie Hockey is retained. Jake Hyde signed from Yeovil, last season champions. Ibia Camby joins our illustrious list of Spot the X-Stone in the opposing squad. Probably have one from everyone so far this season, I think. He was at St Albans and Dartford last season, you may recall. Osman Foyo signed on loan from Ipswich Town. And a very recent signing, Jordan Greenwich. He signed and then immediately scored an equaliser on Bank Holiday Monday. So some very familiar names for Stones fans there, and I think potentially might have come up against all of them at some point last season, I think, Nigel.
Yeah, again, they're all players that, you know, we've come up against before. You know, there's no sort of gremlins there. You know, we know about them, and as we've said in previous videos, you know, you always got to know your dangers, but you would just hope that, you know, that consistency that we've built up in, you know, already having those clean sheets behind us already in the season, that we've got that confidence to keep these players out, and then, if we can score the goals up top, it relieves that little pressure that little bit more, don't they? So, it's again with Chelmsford though, it's Jermaine Francis, as we said, has gone to Barney. He was a big player against them last year, wasn't he? So it's how these other players come in and step up to the plate and get those goals that they're missing from
Alexander, another one who went very early on in the summer.
Exactly, yeah. They scored a lot of goals last year and a lot of assists. So, someone's got to step up to the plate and pick up those goal contributions. And we've just said previously about the midfielders, it can't all be on Charlie Rough because there's got to be that end product there. He can only do so much as a one. It's about all 11 then, not just the one, isn't it? So it's who's going to step up. And again, we've got to be wary of that. The Gallagher effect. They're been rivals through the years, and we've had a mixed record against them. But you always know that Chelmsford are going to be a well-drilled team. They're going to come here and try and get a win, nick a win somewhere. It's just that those contrasting styles and those contrasting fortunes that play out at this time of the season.
So talking of the early part of this season, their early season form, Chelmsford, they lost their opener at Slough. They also lost at Western-super-Mare. In between those games, they've drawn all 3 of their home games by the same scoreline, 1 apiece. So they travelled to Truro this Saturday just gone, and they themselves have just beaten Worthing 5-0 in their previous game. So not an ideal start at all for Chelmsford, as we've already alluded to, Nigel. So considering how long they were locked into the top 3 last season, and for any stat fans out there like myself, they were never in the bottom half at any point last season. I think pretty much every other club had a brief blip except Chelmsford. They were always there or thereabouts. So the fact that they are drop zone curious, I think, is probably the term at present. It's quite a turnaround from last season, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, that's going to impact the players they've lost, and the goal contributions that they contributed to that team. And it's Robbie Simpson as well. He's having to rebuild on the job. It's not just they've come from a relegation, so that if you come from a relegation or you don't quite make the playoffs, you have a massive rebuild, don't you? But to finish second and then literally all the players go, and big influential players as well, all gone on to higher levels. Again, he's got to sort of go out and get all those gems, these rough diamonds from the lower leagues, and integrate them all at once. You can't just cherry pick and sort of integrate them into like a solid established base, because them players have all gone. So again, it's going to call on his management skills and the team that he's got around him to see whether he can do that on a consistent basis.
Nigel's already mentioned the mixed bag of fortunes between the 2 clubs. The Stones have won the last 4 in a row, did the double over them last season, but still finished below the Clarets. Do you think the Stones, they can keep their good form up against them? I mean, to clarify on the mixed bag, I think the last 10 head-to-head, I think Chelmsford have also won 4 of them. They won 4 each, but just Stones 4 is more recent. So, yeah, do you think the Stones can keep their good form up against them and turn a corner, or do you think it's Chelmsford's turn to start climbing the table on Tuesday?
Well, Chelmsford obviously will hope that's going to be the case, wouldn't they? They're going to come up with a similar game plan to what we've seen with Western-super-Mare and Chippenham and Truro here as well. They're going to come in, try and keep it tight, and it's down to the Stones to put in that performance to sort of alleviate that. If they do nick a goal or whatever, hopefully we're 2 or 3 goals ahead and we can, it'll only be a consolation. But that's what you would hope. We need, as a Maystones, we need to start making the Gallagher a fortress. I know it's something that George and Craig have alluded to at the beginning of the season, but off the back of the poor results that we've had here, the 2 defeats, it's imperative now that we get onto it and we set our stall out and we set the agenda for where the game's going to go. It's the old adage, isn't it? Goals change games. Darren's alluded to it in the hot takes as well. You say, oh yeah, we didn't have the chances, but if you take a chance in the first half, the whole complex of the game changes. Because then if teams that have set up and set deep and got your 2 banks of 4 in there, they're going to have to come out and play if they want to get back into the game, and then that leaves the space at the back again, and more chances will come. Especially as like we've said, we're settled in that our model of full-time hybrid now, whereas they're still learning to adapt to that. So they're the training where they become tired after on the back of the Saturday game that they'd have played. Again, it's a different style, but it's just about us implementing our game plans and setting our stall out and sort of setting the agenda.
So remember, if you can't make it to the game on Tuesday, be sure to tune in to Fred and Joe from 7:30 on Stones Live. You'll see them on the hot take and hear them on the highlights once they go online a few hours after the game. Thanks again for watching our latest preview. Smash that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I think that's what the kids say these days. Enjoy the game on Tuesday. And as always,
Come on, you Stones!